Welcome to this tutorial challenge where I teach you a basic art concept and then challenge you to create your own unique artwork using the information from the tutorial. In this lesson, you'll learn about three basic art concepts: line, shape, and form. I will then show you how you can use them to create beautiful abstract paintings. So I'll keep the theory short, but bear with me as it is necessary to understand the concepts. Otherwise, you won't be able to visualize the abstracts later. Line, shape, and form are three progressive concepts. It all starts with a line, which is simply that, a line. A line has length, a start, as well as an end point. As it only has length, we call it a one-dimensional object. Now, traditionally, you'd think of a line as being straight, but it can change direction as well. We can create entire artworks using only lines. Progressing from that, if we make the start and end point of the line meet, we end up with a shape. There are many shapes, and I'm sure you can name at least 10 of them off the top of your head. Classic ones are the circle, square, triangle, and rectangle. More fancy ones would be shapes like a parallelogram, heart, plus shape, and a diamond shape. These are all called regular shapes and tend to be symmetrical or at least appear symmetrical. You can, however, also make random shapes like these. These are called organic shapes. As with lines, you can create artworks entirely out of shapes. A popular art form using this technique is the creation of mandalas, as well as dot art. Shapes are thought of as two-dimensional as they have height as well as length. In order to take your artwork to the next level, we need to add the third dimension, depth, to the artwork. When you do this, your artwork is said to have form. The true way to do it is like this, or like this. Unfortunately, when it comes to painting, we're working on a flat surface, so adding that true third dimension isn't possible. So we will have to simulate our third dimension. We are going to do it by adding color, contrast, textures, and shading onto the canvas. So our two-dimensional artwork will go from this to this using shading, and from this to this using texture, and from this to this using color and shading. Now, let's take a look at a few ways we can add variety to our lines, shapes, and forms in order to create interesting abstracts. The simplest method is to vary the thickness of your lines to create artworks like these. You can also play around with line directions to form repeating patterns, like this. Here is a classic example of how Piet Mondrian used line and color to create his famous modern abstracts. You can take this even further by adding texture to the mix, as you can see here. The big question I always get when discussing abstract painting is, how do I come up with ideas for my abstracts? I don't have the imagination to visualize the painting. And my answer to this is simple. You do have the imagination. You have simply not developed that skill yet. In today's practical exercise, I want to show you just one of the ways for you to visualize your abstracts. This method is not only surprisingly simple, but it's been used by some of the best abstract artists of all time. What you do is take what's around you and reduce it to abstract lines, shapes, and forms. Take a look at these trees. They seem incredibly complex and certainly not the inspiration for an abstract painting. Now, let's go and look at an abstract painting that Piet Mondrian did of a similar tree. Can you see how he looked at and painted the shapes formed by the gaps between the branches, instead of painting the actual branches like we usually do? And this left him with a beautiful abstract that's alive with movement. Here is one of my local scenes, a famous landmark called Rangitoto Island. In order to turn this scene into an abstract, I've broken the scene into shapes of color, like this. So the random shapes in the sky and water represent the setting sun and the rolling waves. the directions of the lines in between the shapes, draw your eye towards the focal point, the island in the distance. This artwork could be taken further by adding texture into each block of color. Now let's move on to a practical demonstration. I found this image containing slices of citrus fruit on Pixabay. We are going to use it to inspire an abstract painting. So let's move over to the canvas and then I'll show you how we do that. So I'm going to be working on a 16 by 20 gallery canvas and I'm going to use acrylic paint. You're obviously welcome to work along in any medium you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to try and paint the oranges, lemons and limes. I'm just going to use the colors and the shapes as inspiration for my own unique creation. So I'll start off, I see the majority color there is from the flesh of the lemons and the limes. So that's that really light yellowy color. So let's put down a bit of yellow on the palette. So it's just cadmium yellow light that I've got there. And now I'm going to take plenty water, lots and lots of water. Just a little bit of a paint into it. The idea here and now is to just get rid of the white of the canvas. So we don't want this to be too bright, it must be pretty dull so that later on we can come back with some nice vibrant colors. So I am now working on a gallery canvas with the deep sides. So I'm going to go all the way around the side so that at the end of the day it looks like the picture wraps all the way around. Yeah, just like that's fine. Right, so I'm just going to scumble it around. It can be even, it can be uneven, it doesn't really matter too much at this stage. So I'll dry that off with a hairdryer. Okay, so our main colors there are yellow, orange and green. So we'll basically be using those colors on the canvas now. Thin down the paint. As you can see, the color is now still very intense. We need the color to be intense. Let's get some orange. So I'll take some yellow and orange, because I think the orange on its own out of the tube is just a little bit too intense. So I'll turn it down ever so slightly with some yellow. Okay, let's get some water into that guy. You want it nice and watery. If you pick up this paint, it must run off the knife. Okay, and the next one is the lime green, so we'll have to just clean the knife and work in an area where the orange isn't really going to meet. So I think for that we'll just use some that's permanent green light. Let's add a bit of phthalo green into it. I suppose you could just use a sap green as well. Just to get a nice emeraldy green. Phthalo green does give you a lovely emerald color. Get a good amount of water into that. Alright, so now we're going to put these colors down on the canvas. Don't be shy with the paint. You want a decent amount of paint, because the paint must lie here on the canvas. So as you can see, I'm sort of just using wherever I'm seeing these colors on the actual photograph, that's where I'm putting them in, more or less. Now we'll just use some cling film. We'll put it over the top. Something like that. So I'm going to give this now a good rub. So what we're trying to do is just create some random textures, making sure everything is all nicely covered. Now I'm going to carefully take these guys off. That reveals a lovely texture that we've got absolutely for free. And then I'm just going to do exactly the same around the edges. And that way we make sure that the texture continues around the side of the canvas. What's nice about this is if you're not happy with the texture, it's easy to just come back and do it again. Just lay some more cling wrap over. Then we do just one little section just to show you. Maybe, I don't know, that's too plain. There's another little plain area, so just crinkle it up, lay it over there. You can even move it around. There you go. Look at all that extra texture you've got. No problem whatsoever. Great, let's dry that off to lock it in. Now I'm going to take a paint pen. So this is a Liquitex acrylic marker, titanium white. It's got actual acrylic paint in it. So whatever paint is normally in your tubes of paint is also in this pen. So what I'm going to do with this is just scribble randomly all over. So this is going to give us a random effect in the end of the day. So I'm making sure I'm going over the sides as well, over the edges. It may seem like nothing now, but I'm sure at the end of the day it will stand out and give us just an extra texture. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean off my palette because I don't need these paints anymore. I'm done with them for now. Now what I'm going to do is take some clear cover. So if you don't know what clear cover is, it's basically a clear plastic see-through sticker which you can get at your hardware or your stationery store. It's used for covering books or lining drawers. See there? It's just a see-through sticker, very thin. So I'm going to cut myself a piece that's roughly the same size as my canvas. Then I'm going to take a pencil and just mark where my edges are. Just by rubbing over those edges with a pencil. Right, now we can take our painting out the way and just work on the clear cover itself. So I've laid the clear cover out with the paper side on top, and as you can see I've just added all sorts of little weights on the edges so that it doesn't curl up on me again. So there's one corner, there's the other corner, there's the other corner, there's the other corner, just so that I know where the edge of the canvas is, like that. Alright, so now I'm going to do just circles. And you can decide, do you want them to be perfect circles or do you want them to be imperfect circles? So I'm drawing these circles regardless of where the edge of my canvas is. Because I want some of them to go out of the picture, some of them to be in the picture, and so on. I'm not going to try and get mine perfect. It's an abstract picture, so they can be quite random. It's all good. Okay, so I'm going to take that, and now I'm going to draw a circle inside the circle, parallel with the other one, more or less. So this is now representing the peel of each citrus fruit. Okay, so I've just outlined all these circles with a Sharpie, just so that you can see them better. Now I'm going to take a scissors and cut them out. Okay, and as you do, you're going to stick them onto your canvas at the correct place. So this one here was in this corner here, and he was slightly off the canvas, so roughly around there. So you'll see that the colors would sort of correspond, but you don't want them to correspond exact. You want little bits of the surrounding colors also to overlap them like that. So we stick them on and you can see what I mean. Okay, so I've stuck him around there. Can you see how he's shining a little bit? So you've still got bits of green and stuff shining through there. So I'm going to go ahead and do it the same with all the rest. Okay, so my entire canvas is masked off. So you can see bits of it over there. Probably not as good as you'd ideally like to see it, but it's probably as good as I'm going to be able to show you. Now we're going to take black paint. So I'm going to use Mars Black because he's a nice solid black color. Then just a decent sized soft hairbrush. So this is a soft full bit. So now I'm going to have to work really carefully because what I want is I'm going to paint all the background black. So I'm carefully going to go around all these edges here, sitting at all sorts of funny angles so that I can see this mask so that it's shining. I don't know where the edges are. Now notice that I'm going along the direction of the mask. And that way I know that the paint is not going to go in underneath the mask. And I'll also always work away from the mask. So from on top of the mask out onto the canvas. That just stops you from squeezing any paint in underneath. So at this stage I'm actually sitting on the floor next to the canvas. So that I can see the canvas from the edge and get the best reflection as what I can on these masks. Alrighty, so now we're starting to be able to see where those circles are. Now I'm going to thin the paint down, but I can't use a lot because it will flow in underneath the the mask. So I'm going to use just a thin amount, small amount, very thin paint, and just drag it inwards like this. And that'll give a bit of a shading on the inside, but it won't fully obscure the textures that we've created, but it will add us a bit of contrast to make the masked off circle area look nice and bright. Alrighty, that was fun. I'm going to dry that off with a hairdryer and then take off the tape so that there's no accidents between the dark and the light. Great, let's remove the mask and see what it looks like. So I'd still do it carefully in case there's still some wet paint. So now suddenly this paint that we've masked off looks all nice and vibrant. Alrighty, so I think a nice black outline won't go amiss. So you can use a rigger brush. I'm going to use a paint pen again. Just this time I'm going to use a black one. Alrighty, so now just to bring out that triangle shape from the inside of the fruit, I'm going to take some gold paint. I'll thin that down with some water, and then using a rigger brush, draw in a few triangles. And I certainly don't worry if they're perfect or anything. And then let's add a black circle in the center. Maybe this one will squiggle a little bit because those center bits aren't perfect circles. Then I quite like this gold, so I think to play that up, I'm just going to outline each of these guys. And as usual, I'm not trying to make it look perfect or anything like that. And seeing as we're playing around, let's try a few other options. Let's maybe make this also black. That's what's nice about abstracts. You can play around with them as much as you want to, and you can go over stuff and change things until you're happy with it. You could make the inside bit solid. You can make it black like this. And add other embellishments on the inside. You could now go over everything with something else. And then by the same token, just as you can continue for as long as you want to until you're happy, you can stop at any stage. Abstracts don't need to be complicated. You don't necessarily need to have a ton of stuff on the canvas. It can be absolutely simple as long as it's effective and you're happy with it. Let's dry that off. Now what you could do now is you could go around the inside also with a gold outline like we did here. Or you can go completely outside the box and have a whole new different design on the inside. For example, you could have, let's say, a bunch of circles. You could make them matching, or you could maybe decide to make them all different sizes. You know what they say, only a mad person can draw a perfectly round circle freehand. So hopefully I'm not too crazy. We could now maybe take these extra circles and change their color. Maybe give them a bit of coloring as well. How about, say, doing this? Just a tiny touch of water in it just to get it flowing nicely. Let's see, where do we have greens? We have some greens around here. So I'm going to use a light little color wash. There's greens there. There's some greens over here. In this vicinity. Let's get a bit of yellow. You can see we don't need much paint. We're just discoloring or giving a glaze over what we already have there. Just rubbing over it again so that the black background doesn't end up too yellow. And a bit of orange. You could now even decide these things are bubbles, so now they get a little highlight each. And that again changes the whole picture entirely. And maybe you decide to make one or two of these blocks a little bit more colorful. So I'll choose just absolutely random blocks, not necessarily the big ones. What I will do though is orange, like here, and maybe do a green one. And these guys I won't make as bright as the outside. The center one's quite big. I think we can do another orange one. So I'm making sure that there's at least 3 colored ones inside each. 3 is always a nice number. And you can decide to stop here, or you can decide to continue. It's all up to you. Maybe I'll add some parallel lines, some energy lines going around all these objects. So at this point I think I'm pretty happy. This is one more little thing I feel I need to do to make me 100% happy, and that's I'm going to outline the inside of these initial circles with gold as well. And I think that will tie the inside and the outside of the circles together. It'll create a harmony between inside and outside. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this guy. I'll call it a day on him. You can obviously continue ad infinitum, adding as many embellishments and layers as what you want. So seeing as he's finished, maybe I'll call him Citrus Bubbles. What do you think? Let me know in the comments what you would call it. Right, so as a recap, let's go and take a look. We've got lines, we've got the energy lines going around the circles. We've got shapes, the circles themselves. We've got form, which is all the texture, and the little highlights also add form because that makes those bubbles look like bubbles and not just flat circles. So we've got line, shape, and form in this abstract. So your job now is to go and take the same citrus photograph and create your own unique artwork from it. Something that looks completely different to mine. Use your imagination. Let your imagination run free. Just remember, you got to use line, shape, and form inside this artwork. Good luck. I look forward to seeing what it looks like, so please post it on the forum for me so that I can take a look.